So first of all, many of you may not know myself, as this comes up here. Customized Energy Solutions, we've been in India just for about the last 3 years here, but I've been in the United States for the last 15, and it focused on energy sector. However, I personally have been involved in the wastewater area and how do you recycle water and have more efficient use of it. So I won't go through this in the sake of time of who we are, but suffice to say, we work with a lot of generation assets, including a lot of hydro assets, renewable generation, and attribute management, and then we also work with some of the emerging technologies to get more out of our systems. But what we're talking about today and what I'm focusing on is looking at the current intersections of water and power. What might be some of the future intersections of power and water that we don't see right now? What are some policy changes that can help in that transition? And then finally, trying to put a big picture on this as we're finishing the panel. So the first one, as all the panelists have mentioned, is hydropower. It's wonderful when you have a year like this, with great rains, lots of the dams are filled. Last year, that was not the case, and so it's very intermittent in nature. If you look at different types of generation that use water, one of the issues with some of the coal generation was an inability to use it because it needs cooling water. And so here you have roughly per megawatt or 1,000 kilowatt hours how much different types of generation needs. So you'll see coal needing somewhere between 530 and 2,000 liters for each megawatt hour of output that you need for cooling. So all of us have been focusing on agriculture. I think about 50% of all water in Maharashtra, where I lived in Pune and where our office is, that went to the production of sugar. So just that single crop was at half of all water use. So that is going to be a critical thing as we deal with both of these issues. Of course, there is a backup system. So if you can't find water, you can do one of two things. You can pay how much per liter for one of these. You think of what the distribution cycle is on this. You go to a water source, you fill it up, you put a petroleum covering on it, plastic, and then you ship it here. Very, very expensive sources of water. This isn't that much better, as we have water tankers come in. So people are paying for water right now. They're just paying for it in ways that are very inefficient. So in the future, what are we going to need for water usage? Well, as the last presenter showed, one of the greatest increases in energy, the 5 largest uses of water in India, irrigation, drinking water, industry, energy, other. If you just focus on charging industry, you'll see industry is one of the lowest users of water. And so that is probably not going to do a great deal to solve your water problems by focusing on, let's pile on industry because they can afford it and we can meter it there. So if you look at all the uses of water, irrigation is by far and away the largest one. One of the other future uses of water may be in fracking. So we haven't heard about that, I think, in this conference yet. I would be very surprised if you don't hear a lot more about it. It's what's turning the United States into an energy-producing country from an energy-consuming country. And it's had a tremendous just macroeconomic effect in the United States and other places. But one thing doesn't come out a lot is it requires a lot of water. Because you essentially inject water in to create to loosen up the natural gas that you then come out. Natural gas, though, uses very little water, only 38 liters per megawatt hour for cooling, and so it's a much more long-term energy efficient source in terms of its use of water. The other area that may be coastal desalination. Desalination is sort of the last option in many cases, but it's one that we have abundant water on the planet. We have more water on the planet than we can ever use. The issue is getting it to be potable and getting it to be able to be used. Desalination, and I have the costs here of different countries and what the cost of desalination is and where the goal is to get that being produced. It can actually be a lot cheaper than certainly trying to put it in trucks and ship it over distances. So what can be done to help improve some of the interactions between energy and water? The first one is to rationalize both energy pricing as well as water pricing. I realize that there's a very large percentage of the population in agriculture, so pricing water has a lot of political issues with it, but trying to come up with some type of rational way to allocate water, because things that are free people don't value and people don't use efficiently, and so coming up with some mechanism to quantify and to price what you care about, and we all care about water. And so looking at the economic, the social, and the environment, and that's really where government can play a major role in the water energy nexus. The second one is there's a lot of low-hanging fruit. So there's low-hanging fruit includes getting silt off of riverbeds, helping with rainwater harvesting, and other techniques that are able to create greater sources of water, especially for drinking. So the big idea, one of my tricks I learned early on is you try to find one of the smartest people and then you try to copy what they say. So yesterday I heard Sam, and he said a few things that I thought made a lot of sense, and I think they apply equally to water and to energy. The first one is that we have to have reform within the sector, have to break down barriers to water and to energy, land acquisition, all things people are very familiar with here. The second one is, and what would be much more challenging, is privatization. The dotted line here at the top is how much privatization projects are happening in China in terms of the water energy sector. How much is happening in India is the very bottom line, and actually it's not, that's like all developing economies. So if you look at, if you want to create investment in water, that is going to require public-private partnerships, and it will require more investment and privatization of some water systems. What happens if you improve the regulations, if you then move to create private interests that are in it? And the next thing is innovation. People are coming up with new ideas, new ways to do things. How do you monitor water to make sure it's not lost? How do you actually manage this? And what all of that can do is to create a new paradigm where we're able to actually come up with new solutions to solve this energy-water nexus. Thank you very much.